There's this song about Coca-Cola Bloodhounds.
Yeah, it's called Wine in the Weather.
Wine in the Weather.
Song is what the song's called. We'll keep
And it's
getting
about
better,
Coca-Cola?
like wine in the weather. Yeah. Well, no, it's about getting better, like wine and weather. And then like one of the verses is like, when a Pepsi won't do, when I can't remember how it goes.
Is this just guerrilla
When you're-
marketing by the Coca-Cola factory? What's going on?
When you're done to all through and a Pepsi won't do, I'll be your human Coca-Cola bloodhound.
I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of weird.
I know you've heard the song.
I'm pretty sure I have that. Wine in the Weather line sounds pretty familiar.
It's a good song.
Anyways,
That part's weird, but
that
it's a
part
good
is
song.
weird. Welcome back to Shun for Good Reason again. I'm Anna.
And I'm Tess again.
Still?
I'm sticking to my guns.
Sweet. And how are you today, Tess?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty good.
Well, it's been a long week.
You just said that because it's part of the required.
It feels like
podcast
part of the
beginning.
script at this point,
Yes,
right?
script. Yes.
Oh, but it's okay. What are we talking about today?
Power. To quote Jeremy Clarkson.
Oh, gosh.
I couldn't decide if I should quote Jeremy Clarkson or Lord of the Rings.
Above all else, desire power.
Yeah.
I mean, they both count, right?
Yeah.
So you wanted to talk about the other side of the shunning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, because we've talked a lot about how we've been shunned. And,
It's kind of the whole premise of the podcast.
yeah. And I think I've, like, hinted at it before, if I remember right. But, like, because we titled it Shunned for Good Reason, right? And I feel like there's two sides of that coin, and that's us being shunned by the church and our families and whatnot. But also, like, we've shunned religion, essentially, to put it very simply. It's probably a little more complicated than that, but and so it is kind of a two-sided thing where they're different, I think, how they happen and the moving parts involved, and definitely the reasons why are very different of why our church and family shunned us versus why we decided to shun them, I guess, might be another way of putting it. And like, I mean, I know we've tried not to shun our family specifically.
Yeah, try to still go to things that we're invited to, try
Yeah.
to pick up the phone or answer texts.
Right. Yeah. But it's hard when they only invite you to one thing a year. And so, but we've tried, like, all along, we've always been like, we'll keep doing stuff. And we've invited them to things, and less recently because they just don't come. But on the other hand, we definitely have shunned religion. Like, I'm not going to church anytime soon, if ever, again. Because I don't think it's good for me, for lots of reasons, very, very specific reasons. But I mean, just again, simply, it's not good for me, and so I don't want that in my life.
Fair.
But like, and you know, like I mean, it makes me mad that we got shunned. I don't like that. I think our families are mad that we shunned religion, right? And I don't think they don't understand why we shunned religion.
No.
I know that for sure. They have no clue. And probably they think that we shunned it because we were being rebellious. You know,
Mhm.
we're just like, we had a rebellious streak. And so we are rebelling against the goodness of the church.
Rebelling against God.
Right. Oh, for sure they think that. But the truth is, rebellion really had nothing to do with any of our thought processes, right? Like, even through all of our deconstruction, we were like trying so hard to like hold on to it and kind of save it for ourselves, save the Bible for ourselves, and save religion for, well, you know, not just ourselves too, but others, try and make it work. And obviously we kind of gave up on that eventually, but we weren't just like, we weren't just running away, saying it's too hard or too constricting, right? You know, like we weren't, I don't know, we just weren't rebelling. That wasn't our thought process.
Well, yeah, because we're good at rules.
Oh, yeah.
We're very good at rules.
And it's all we knew, and I mean, it's and we didn't think it was all bad. You know, I'm more of a tendency to think it's all bad now, but it's mostly bad.
Yeah.
But like, I was sure there was enough good in it we could keep at it. That's why we kept pastoring for a while there. Like, we can make this work. We couldn't make it work, but we tried.
Why do you think we couldn't make it work?
Because of power!
Yeah.
I do think that was a big part of it.
It was a big part of it. The power and control dynamics within the church structure are pretty fucked up. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's scary. And that was like a big part of our realizing we can't keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just such a core aspect of evangelicalism. This misuse of power, the abuse of power, the desire for power, like it is well and thoroughly tied into evangelical theology and life.
And we had to build all of that understanding from scratch.
Oh yeah.
Essentially.
Oh yeah. We were just figuring it out as we went, for sure.
So imagine my surprise when I got into nursing school and we started doing some of the more social classes, and I encountered the National Domestic Abuse Hotline's Power and Control Wheel, which explained everything that the church had been doing to us for the past 30 years.
Oh. That was. But they were all deceived.
Before another wheel was
That's
made.
right. It didn't have eyeballs around the outside of it.
So the Power and Control Wheel was developed by the Domestic Abuse Intervention Programs, and it shows how domestic abuse is not just beating your spouse and or child. It is an entire systemic pattern of things that you can use to coerce someone into doing what you want and maintain control over them. So it's, I know, it's spooky. It's designed like a wheel. The hub of the wheel, so what's in the middle, is power and control, and we're thinking wagon wheel, not car wheel so much at this point. And then the outer rim of this wagon wheel is physical and sexual violence, which holds everything together, but is not the only part of control and manipulation that is used here.
So physical sexual violence is like the tire.
Yes.
And then there's
But now you got it
spokes
back
that-
to car tires, Tess.
I know. Rim. How about rim?
There we go.
Okay. Reinventing the wheel.
Oh dear. And so each of the spokes here, and there's 8 of them, is a tactic that represents one of the methods that you can use to maintain power and control over another individual or group of individuals. So the first one is coercion and threats, which is the domestic abuse hotline refers to this as threatening to hurt the partner, leave, or commit suicide. And in church terms, that doesn't usually look like threatening to commit suicide or die by suicide. It's a threat against your soul or the souls of those around you. So if you don't follow these rules, you are a bad influence on the people around you, and they are at risk for eternal perdition, burning in a lake of fire. And intimidation.
That's hell.
Yeah, that's how. Intimidation is the second spoke, which is using looks, gestures, or destroying property to create fear.
Oh, the looks, man.
Oh, the looks.
That's a thing.
It's a thing. It is very much a thing. Oh, and the gestures. There's an entire unspoken portion of religion in most places, and this will happen in any group of people that spend a lot of time together or think a lot of the same things. In the church one, though, there you know the judgy looks from the old lady and the passive aggressive comments that you'll have. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Oh, your child looks so cold. Wouldn't they be better if they put some socks on? The boomer passive aggressive aesthetic has become very prevalent in the church at this time.
Passive aggressiveness is a good intimidation tool.
It is.
Yeah.
The third spoke is emotional abuse. So the domestic violence hotline describes this as gaslighting, name calling, or playing mind games to diminish self-esteem. And this is one of the biggest ones that is used in the church because you've got to have your salvation message in the church. And the biggest part of the salvation message is you're a sinner. You're a bad person. There's nothing that you can do that could ever save yourself from being a bad person, and you're going to hell because of it. You are, as we would say in the church, all of your good works are as filthy rags unless you have the blessing of Christ and the church.
The bad news of good news, as they say.
Yeah, the bad news of the good news. The gospel is the good news. The bad news is fuck you. Fourth spoke is isolation, or controlling what the partner does, who they see, talk to, and limiting outside involvement, according to the National Abuse Hotline. Isolation in the church looks like the outside world is scary and dark, and the only light that you will find in the world is within the confines of the church. This is where we love each other. This is where we're a family. This is where safety lies, is by making sure that you stay with us and believe the same things that we believe. Otherwise, you will be affected by the world. And you must be, as we would say in the church, in the world but not of the world.
This is why VeggieTales exists.
Yes. You have to live in this world, but you don't have to be happy about it.
Well, then they create a whole world themselves that is, its own thing.
Yep.
So you don't have to leave it because it's bad and scary and evil.
Very bad. Very
You're never
scary,
quite
very
sure
evil.
why it's so evil. You just know it is.
Well, because they're sinners, Tess. They're doing debaucheries over there.
Right. Very bad.
Yes.
Yes.
Fifth spoke is essentially Darvo, so minimizing, denying, and blaming. You shift responsibility for abuse onto the victim of that abuse. So Darvo is very common, especially in support groups where people are coming out of cults or narcissistic relationships, which have a lot of similarities. And Darvo stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. So in domestic violence, this will often look like, well, why did you make me do that? If you're so unhappy, why don't you leave? And you shift any sort of accountability back onto the partner who is being manipulated into staying. Using children is spoke number 6. And in domestic violence, this looks like using children for guilt or threatening to take them away and keeping your partner in it because of that. In evangelical church circles, this looks like targeting children for your outreach programs. The free children's programs they'll have at the church that convince the children to come to the church and bring their parents to the church, because in the words of old evangelists, if you get the children, you get the parents.
Right.
So as long as you're giving them snacks, they seem happy, their friends are there, you're gonna get the parents to come along eventually out of guilt, if nothing else. And then to keep people in it, especially adult people like us who have children, the threat is, well, you can't leave the church because if you're wrong, you are dooming your children for eternity. Economic abuse is spoke number 7, and this is a little bit of the overlap there. The trad wife movement is big in the evangelical church, in which the female spouse, because these are all heteronormative relationships, the female spouse does not have the ability to work, or her work is seen as less valuable, and all finances are shared. You don't have separate bank accounts, you don't have anything to fall back on. You can't possibly leave, because then you would have no finances, no house, no car, nothing. Everything would be gone entirely.
Yeah.
And that overlaps into relationships in the church. The other part of that, specifically church-oriented, is that you are expected to tithe at least 10% of your income to the church and use the services of people who are acquainted with your church, at least. You're supposed to get your house builder from there, you're supposed to get your auto mechanic from there, you're supposed to have this entire network, mostly based on people who are members of the church.
Yeah. Well, and there's also volunteering, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not just spending your money, you're spending your time.
Yeah.
Pouring into the church.
Yes.
It's a good picture, because like you're literally, like, people don't realize how much time is a economic commodity.
Yeah.
But that's just what it is. It's the one thing we don't have more of, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't get more of it, and how you spend it is says a lot, and the church asks a lot of your time.
Yeah, it's the church structure itself is built on the backs of unpaid labor.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Specifically from young teenagers, young 20-somethings.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I've been
for sure.
working
Moving
for the
chairs.
church since I was 9.
Yeah.
Well, before that, but that's when I started having like my own Sunday school classes, and I had to spend hours a week preparing for these and teaching them and making sure that I followed up with parents and all that sort of thing. And it's so weird to think about, because we have a 9-year-old right now. Can you imagine her spending 6 hours a week preparing a Sunday school lecture and providing it to the children?
Yeah. Well, it all sounds so charitable and giving back, but like when you start to think of it in terms of like that pressure to give beyond your own means and promises of financial miracles and the lack of financial transparency and how much wealth has been made by church leaders through this process, and like
if you give your whole tax return to the church, you will never want for finances again. Is the promise from a lot of pulpits come March, April.
Yeah. Yep. And then nobody knows where that money goes, and it's all like, in theory, it's supposed to go towards helping the poor, right? And but that's not what happens in most cases.
It is not.
Yeah.
And then the last spoke in this control wheel is male privilege, which in a domestic violence situation looks like treating the partner like a servant or making all the big decisions. And that is exactly what you are supposed to do in the evangelical traditional heteronormative marriage.
Yeah.
Is the woman makes none of the decisions, the man makes all of the decisions. She makes sure that his coffee's ready in the morning, that his lunch is packed, that he goes off to work okay, that she takes care of everything at the house, that food is ready when he gets back, and the servant mentality there, plus not having any control over finances or any other decision that is made within the household.
Yeah, and it applies to, it's the same thing in the church.
Yeah.
You don't have any women on the board. You don't have women allowed to speak without weird strings and things attached, and
yeah,
men specifically. And
yeah, well, and this is
and
where you get that disdain for single women as well in the church, because they don't have a man to speak for them. So at our Bible school, this looked like when a woman would get up to speak in chapel. First off, she wasn't allowed on the main stage. She had to be below that stage, and it was like, what, 5 feet tall or something?
it's pretty tall.
So she had to stand in front of it so you couldn't see her because of the tilt of the floor. And she was given a podium, not a pulpit. It had to look visually different than the pulpit that the men were allowed to have. There was barely room for a book on there, which is hilarious because the guys always came up with typed notes and women would bring sources. And it also looked like when that woman would get up to speak, a lot of the men would leave the room because Paul said, I do not permit a woman to speak or have authority over men. So they didn't think that they could get any truth, and if they did, they were sinning. They had to leave immediately so they didn't accidentally get contaminated by woman teaching.
It's so stupid.
Yes, yes it is.
Well, and I think the main point here, all these spokes, is that like there's a clear ethical problem, right? Like, and these are the things we started seeing when we started seeing things, seeing that there are problems, and like, oh my goodness, this is bad. Like, and because that's what the power they had was being used for, was to control, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't being used to lift people up and make their lives better. It was just it's a very, very specific system to keep certain people in control. Like that's what it's set out to be and to do. And you see, it's not hard to point out the mechanisms of this, just, quickly running through all that. Like, it's not hard to see how all of that really plays out in everyday life in the church. Like, it really does. It's not, well, like you said, you saw the wheel and were like, oh, this is just what we were figuring out.
Yeah.
Like, it's really straightforward. It's not.
Well, and the whole point of the power and control wheel from the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, which everybody should go look at and be aware of, especially if any of these sound familiar, of course. It's created to help survivors, advocates, lawyers, the justice system understand that physical violence isn't the only kind of violence. There is a systemic strategy of domination that goes into violence, usually before any physical violence ever happens.
Yeah.
Because physical violence is usually an outcropping of this that happens when you feel like those strategies are failing you.
Yeah.
But these are the ones that come first.
Right.
You don't have to fight a holy war with literal swords to be doing violence to the people around you.
Right. Well, because when somebody else is controlling somebody else, that's violence, right?
Yes.
Like, that's because the only person who should be in charge of a single person is that person. Right? That's being human, being yourself, being allowed to be yourself.
Yeah.
Is not being under somebody else's control.
And what these things do is they take away all semblance of control and place it in the hands of someone other than yourself. It
Yeah.
removes autonomy and it removes a lot of the meaning from life.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Right? Because you're just doing what you're told, what you're supposed to do, fitting into this very specific mold that has been laid out in front of you that is how you're supposed to live your life. Like, it's very specific. Like, and you can only listen to certain things, and you can only watch certain things, and you can only go certain places, and it takes away all of that choice. Like, it's just, I mean, for me, it just, like, it basically, the bad choices just weren't choices. They weren't available. They didn't exist. They weren't talked about, and in a lot of cases, I didn't have language for them. Like, to be very specific, transgender and gay, I didn't have language for that. Because nobody talked about it. The closest reference I had for gay was like hearing, 10 to 13-year-old boys use it in that sarcastic
As a
teasing
slur.
kind of a
Yeah.
way, and I had no idea why or what it was referring to. I knew it was supposed to be bad, but and that I wasn't supposed to say it because it was being mean to somebody else. Like, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
But other than that, there was just, like, the language wasn't available. That was the level of control. Like, you're not even going to be able to talk about it because we just don't talk about it. It's not in this world. It's that small bubble thing.
Yeah.
That I talk about, and it's a control thing because it'll keep you in this world if you just don't know anything else about the rest of the world.
Keeps you inside the wheel.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, so I could grow up and tithe and give my life to continuing the system, and that was the expectation of what was going to happen. And without ever really having a choice otherwise. That was the goal. Right? Like the goal of my childhood and the way I was raised was for me to essentially not have a choice but to live this very specific way. Gosh, that sounds crazy saying it out loud. It obviously worked out really well, but
Yeah. Well, because choice is an enemy of the church.
yeah.
Because
for
that
sure.
makes way for your sin nature to come out, in their view.
Right.
The more choices
Boy,
you have,
did it. No.
the more choices you have, the more sinful you're going to prove yourself to be. That's just how it is, because you are a filthy rag.
Right. But then they can label whatever they don't want as sin.
Yes.
Right? And then they just, they pick and choose Bible verses to support their whatever decision, whatever thing they decided to be sin this year.
So what were some of the things they decided to be sin?
Being transgender?
Leopard print was one of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Listening to Coldplay.
High top sneakers.
High top sneakers?
Uh-huh.
What? That's wacky. You had the really wacky stuff. I missed out on some of the more wacky stuff.
There was one community I visited where I got to listen to an elder give a sermon about, because they wore head coverings, but some of the girls had started letting the little ribbons that they tied under their chin, they hadn't been like tying them. They would just let them like hang down their necks.
How dare they?
I know, and that was sin.
Such a control thing. Like, see, that's so obviously a control thing because it's so stupid, right? Like, the ribbon's tied or untied? Does it say anything about that in the Bible?
Well,
Heck no.
he said
No,
it
it
was
does
a
not.
spirit of Jezebel because
Jezebel.
if the ribbons aren't tied, the prairie winds will take your head covering off, showing your shame to all of your brothers.
Your shame,
Yes.
which is just literally the top of your head.
Yeah.
Well,
and your hair, specifically.
Oh, right, your
Yeah.
hair, right. Because there's a whole thing about that in the Bible too, right? Like a woman's...
If a woman prays with her head uncovered, let her be shorn.
Well, no, but doesn't it also say like a woman's hair is her glory? Yeah. Like that's literally in the Bible.
Yeah. Well, but that's why you shouldn't show your hair in public, Tess, is because your hair is your glory. If you're showing your hair, you know that you're being glorious, and therefore you are showing a spirit of Jezebelian vanity, and you are trying to take power and glory from God. And that's why you should tie your ribbons of your head covering underneath your chin.
Such rationalization.
Yeah.
It's insane. The amount of rationalization you have to go through to get that. You clearly started from one thing and not the other. Right?
You've texted your way to something.
You clearly started with, they shouldn't be allowed to show their hair. And went all the way through the circuit to get back there. Which is totally opposite of what you're supposed to do when interpreting the Bible. Supposed to do, quote unquote.
Yeah, when have you ever seen anybody do that?
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely never.
Alright, you vamp on the video for a minute. I'm going to run out here real quick.
Okay. I don't know. I'm supposed to like sing or something. Do a little dance. Sing a little song. Get down tonight. Get down tonight. I don't think this is very watchable.
Sorry, that fan was just really loud.
Gotcha.
Alright, so the center of this wheel is power and control.
Okay.
And in a church, the power and control is very centralized. It's centralized in a very specific way. You have your pastor and elders who are the ones who do hear from God because they are the oldest and wisest and most experienced in the world, and anybody who doubts that is an idiot. So they can claim that they have heard from God and that God has told them that you're not supposed to uncover your head in public, or that God wants them to get pink flowers on the communal dress fabric and not blue.
Right.
Any
God,
of the things.
which is the same thing as God told me to marry you, or you to marry, whatever it is.
Yeah, God showed me in a dream that I was supposed to marry you.
Yeah.
Weird way of saying you had a wet dream about me, but okay.
It's the same thing. When you can claim the voice of God, right?
Yeah, well,
you can do whatever you want, right?
Because you are God's representative as a higher member of the clergy.
Yeah.
You have to have the trust of your congregation because you're their biggest step to God. And then you don't have accountability, which is where we see things go off the rails. Especially in the mega churches, it actually makes headlines. But what you don't see is every other church where this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just the idea of hearing directly from God is like, it's such a, first of all, very Protestant thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's come down through the whole Protestant tradition. And in theory, like, everybody's supposed to be able to hear from God. Right?
In theory.
Like,
Well,
that's
yeah,
the whole
but
Protestant
some
thing.
people are stupider,
Yeah.
which is why they're members and not elders.
Apparently. Well, because, like, as when I was pastoring, I was very adamant that anybody should be able to basically do what I did. Right?
Yeah.
That was the way I saw it. Right? You should be able to read the Bible and hear from God hopefully more than I do, because I don't even remember much these days, but that was kind of my thought process.
Right, but that
And-
was also part of your theology at the time, because you believed in the illumination of Scripture.
Yeah.
So if you have the Holy Spirit and you read the Bible, then the Holy Spirit will illuminate the text for you and make it real and potent and help you learn things from it.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you actually believed in theology.
But what was crazy was I would go into these churches, and the congregants would literally tell me things like what was that one person told me once? It was like, well, you're the pastor, you're the only one who can understand this, or I can't do that. And I was like, no, you literally can. It's you could do the same things that I'm doing.
I've seen you read. I know you know how.
Yeah, I'm just reading and looking things up, and it's just studying, right? Like, it's not. It's like they thought it was. They thought because I was a pastor, it was this. I had some magic, and they really held on to that tight. Is what I discovered eventually. Took me a while, especially when we were in Nebraska. I realized that, like, just how strongly they held this belief that the pastor had some magic to, hear the voice of God and tell it to the people. And like I reached a point where I realized that, like, if I wanted to, I could pretty much say anything and they'd probably believe me. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, I was like, wow, it was such a sad realization. Just that, like, just me, this random person who happened to get this pastoring job here, if I'd wanted to, probably could have run my own little kingdom. Fortunately for everybody, I had no desire to do that, but
Unfortunately.
but I could have. And a lot of pastors just do. They just run their own little kingdoms.
Well,
Because
and the
that's
hierarchy,
what's expected. The theology supports it. The kind of tradition of the pastor role and the magic of that is very strongly built into a lot of these little churches and big churches. And the whole patriarchal thing and the tithing system and all of it is just so set up for pastor to run their own little kingdom.
well, and the hierarchy supports it as well. So
Yeah.
churches are built on a hierarchy, and depending on the church that you're in, that hierarchy has at the top, always it's supposed to be God at the top, right? And then underneath God, you have the pastor and the board members, essentially, with some having the pastor above the board members and some having the board members above the pastor. Usually it equals out to about the same thing. They're all
Yeah.
on about the same level.
Yeah,
And then under that, you very usually have elders who are people that are respected by the church, respected by the congregants. And then underneath the elders, you have the members. Underneath the members, you have women.
Yeah.
And underneath women, you have children. And then sinners, but they don't come. If they did, we'd get them saved.
Never saw that happen. Not once. But anyways.
And it's not a new hierarchy. This hierarchy has existed for as long as Christianity has existed as it's taught to us.
Yeah.
So even when you look back at the New Testament, you can see those callbacks to the hierarchy of God, then Jesus, then the 12 apostles, then all of the elders that were underneath them that they had to, like, go and chastise and or send pastoral missives to.
Well, and their magic word they use is authority.
Yes.
Right? They don't use the word power because they're smart enough to know that would be a bad idea.
Yeah.
They use the word authority. And everything, and this, I remember this very specifically, knowing this and understanding this in my life in the church, was that authority was like everything. You listen to your authorities, you ask the advice of your authorities, you try and make sure that you're honoring the authorities over you and all of the decisions that you're making, so that you can make sure that you're not outside of the will of God. That's part of, like, praying and figure out the will of God, is talking to those in authority over you, right? To make sure you're making the right decisions. And I feel like that's really where they kind of manage to sidestep that everybody has access to God piece.
Right.
Because, yeah, you still have access to God, but you have to come talk to us first. Before, whatever God's saying to you, come talk to us about it, and we'll make sure that you're hearing God right. Right? It was very much implied piece.
And the proof texts for this are from Romans 13. So, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. There's no authority except that which was instituted by God.
Right.
And then from 1 Peter, be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution.
Yeah.
To the emperor as supreme or to governors as sent by God.
Right. Which they're trying to talk themselves out of these days, but
that's still one of the primary things that has made them stick to the current reigning regime of the United States.
Yeah.
Is that God told us to be subject to authorities and governors because all authority is granted by God. So if this person is in power over me, God put them there.
Yep.
For a reason.
Right. Unless they're part of the other party.
In which case, the devil won that one. Yeah.
It's not always logical, that's for sure.
It's not. So then from the power and control hub, we come out to using intimidation. And that's where shunning comes in. One of the places where shunning comes in. So creating fear through the threats, the actions or displays of power. Shunning is one of the things that needs to keep you in the church. The threat of being out of the in-group means social isolation, economic hardship. It means that you won't get to heaven and that you will burn forever in hell. So there's a lot on the line to intimidate about. Yeah. And that intimidation is also used from the pulpit or the stage where someone, either an elder or a deacon or the pastor, gets up and says, very passive aggressively, I've noticed some people in the church are doing this and I want to caution everyone. And then comes out something about make sure you tie your head covering under your chin. And then you've been called out passive aggressively in front of the entire congregation. So if you don't get your act together, every member of that congregation is now responsible for holding you accountable to that.
Yeah.
Which means potentially shunning.
Right. Depending on. Yeah. Which for the most part is just a threat, right? Because usually people don't leave.
Yeah, usually it's a threat and you have a bit of social isolation. And then when you come back into the fold, so to speak, everybody just talks about that time of trouble or trial or tribulation that you went through. And thank goodness that God found you through that.
Right.
And you learned how to tie a bow properly under your chin.
Right. Which is also really it feels welcoming and warm and connecting, right? That you did this thing and you fixed this thing and now you're better and you're back in community and it has that very that powerful pull of human connection tied to it and it keeps you there.
It does.
It keeps a lot of people there. And they don't and they don't see the manipulation from the power side, right? That's not, I didn't for a long time, right? I didn't understand that that's what was happening really fully.
Yeah.
Because that's just reality and the way things work. So you don't see the intimidation as intimidation, you see it as care.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's crazy, but that's what for sure what I saw it as.
Yep.
I saw it as care and love and because they're just trying to save me from hell.
Right, and that's part of where the intimidation steps out from the church and into the public. So evangelical crusades, where you are intimidating people and threatening them by showing them graphic depictions of hell or preaching your sinners in the hands of an angry God, Edwards type sermon.
Yeah.
Or as we did on evangelistic campaigns in the jungle, we would drive out, tell everybody to come to the meeting because we're going to have a movie, and then preach at them for 3 hours, and then turn on a 3-hour-long, very graphic film about demons chasing you, and the only way to escape them was to pray the sinner's prayer and repent.
Yeah. I have a friend who did not grow up in the church, not really, and a little Catholic, but it's Casey. But, and a couple years ago, one of the students we work with invited a couple staff members to come watch a play at their school, I don't remember, somewhere. But the play was, what's it called? Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames, I think it was called. Yeah. So like I heard that title and I knew exactly what it was, right? More or less. I don't think I've ever seen it, but I just knew by the title. Oh, I know what that is. I'm not going to that. But my friend who did not grow up in church, and I think somebody else from my work went to. I don't remember who it was, but they went and saw this play, and I just remember going back and being like, whoa. That was scary. Like, yeah, I know it was.
Oh,
and like also like she was just kind of laughing about how ridiculous it was because like they showed this whole long scary thing and then they did do like the
altar
sinner's prayer altar call thing. And she just thought it was so funny, but because it kind of is from a very outside perspective, just kind of ridiculous, but it's just this, scary hour and a half, 2 hours of if you don't do this, you're going to hell, and it's gonna be painful and bad, and just intimidating you into trying to make a fearful decision. I did it when I was 8. I remember it was like Halloween, and there was some special on the TV, and it's the same shit, where they have this whole thing about hell and burning in hell and juxtaposing that to heaven, and it looks all nice and happy,
and the streets are made out of gold and fruit's always in season.
Yeah.
Well, and that bleeds over into the emotional abuse section where you pathologize normal human experiences. Like, you should feel ashamed for having sexuality. You should feel ashamed if you ever think about anything sexy, and you should never question the authority of the church, because that is a demon of pride that is overtaking your soul and making you question the authority of the church.
Well, and as an 8-year-old, it wasn't even a sexuality thing. It was just like, you're human, so you obviously are a sinner. Like, it was just like this. You exist, so you're bad somehow. And like, I remember as an 8-year-old, like, trying to figure out what I'd been doing that was so bad.
You existed, and God took that personally.
And like, the things I would come up with were like arguing with my sister, and like.
And now you're going to hell.
Yeah.
That's what you get for arguing with your sister.
But it didn't really matter what I came up with, because I already had the information that I was a sinner. Whatever it was I came up with, it didn't really matter. There was something, and either I wasn't coming up with enough stuff or the right stuff, but it didn't really matter because I was just guilty and was going to go to hell unless I did this thing where I commit my life to Jesus and yada, yada, yada.
Well, but what that brings into the picture as well is a lot of victim blaming. So if anything bad ever happens to you, it's because you fell out of grace with God.
Right.
It's because you did something wrong, you put yourself in the wrong situation, and this can go anywhere from being murdered or raped to somebody dinging your car in the parking lot. Like, all of those are because either the devil is testing you, or you were in a place that God knew you shouldn't be. Right. Like, if you got dinged in a Walmart parking lot, that's probably because you glanced at a secular CD while you were there.
Yeah, but you already know you're bad, so it's always a losing proposition.
Always.
Like, you're always in the wrong. because you already know, like, that's the beginning thing, that whole bad news thing.
Yeah.
It's just so built in. You're always trying to work your way back. You're always trying to make sure you're in God's good graces.
Yeah.
And like they tell you you're always in God's good graces, like, but you're not because you're a sinner. Like, it's this crazy mind fuck.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I felt for sure is I was just always having to do another thing to try and make sure that I was in God's good graces, essentially. Yeah. And I hardly ever felt like I was. Like, I almost always felt on the outside looking in.
Yeah, well, and you have to keep that cognitive dissonance alive and thriving in your people, which is where the next spoke of isolation comes in. Right. So as long as you have control over what people see, what they think, what they hear, where they can hang out, who they can hang out with, you're going to be able to keep that cognitive distance going, which is why the homeschool movement was so big. Yeah. That shunning of any sort of secular literature or television, and not having friends outside of the church. You could have acquaintances, but you're known by the company you keep. Yeah. So any of your close friends has to be a member of the church, preferably of your church, so that they can make sure that you're not getting undue influences from people outside of the church.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of the isolation thing, again, for me, was like, it was part of the authority thing, and that, like, there was always somebody over me that had more information. And it was that magic pastor thing I was talking about. And I guess I did the same thing as a younger person, thinking that the pastors had this magic. Yeah, and the pastors had somehow found the magic formula to where, at least from my perspective, they were at least usually in God's good graces, right? Yeah. Whereas me, I was usually not in God's good graces. And honestly, most of my high school, college experience was me trying to figure out how I could figure out that formula of going from usually outside of God's graces to usually inside of God's graces. Because then I could be a leader and heal the sick and do all these things that were purportedly happening.
But every time you feel like you're inside of God's good graces and you're doing okay, you get one of those passive-aggressive messages from the pulpit.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
So they can knock you down a peg and make sure that you still need to come back. That you don't question. That you don't think too hard.
Yeah. Or they just bring in crazy cult leader person who talked about casting out demons and raising the dead and stuff, and you felt really, really like a really bad Christian after that.
And that's part of the message of school, which is minimizing, denying, and blaming. Your experience isn't as good as their experience.
Yeah.
What you're experiencing is nothing. Think about these people who are healing the sick and casting out demons, and then look at what you're doing. Right. You talked to somebody outside the church today. How in the world could you dare to do that? And it's your fault that you are not able to cast out demons and heal the sick, because you don't have the magic formula.
And you're
Stay here, and someday you will be more sin-free, and you will maybe have the magic formula if you're really lucky and on the in-group.
Yeah. Stop looking at porn, or you'll never be able to heal the sick.
Yeah, that and...
that was the equation in my mind.
Yeah. That, and they need to minimize any harm that they're doing. So if somebody hurts you, you need to forgive them. Just forgive them. Like carte blanche.
Oh, for sure.
So you can get away with all sorts of abuse if people are not allowed to ever think about it or bring it up again.
Right.
And they would always reframe it as, oh, you misunderstood my intention. You know I would never try to hurt you. No. You know that's not what I meant by that. You know that I never really shunned you. You just don't ever call me.
Right. Oh man, yeah, that's a current one.
Yeah, one of the ones that I heard a lot was, you know, the road goes both ways, right? So if you would ever say, oh yeah, I missed you, they would assume that you were being passive aggressive, and they were like, well, the road runs to your house and to my house, so you should have packed up your 4 to 5 children and just driven over here and skipped nap time so that you could hang out with us. Yeah. And then the reputation of the institution is always prioritized over the welfare of a survivor.
Yeah.
Because people get hurt. That's just something that's going to happen. But what we have to make sure that we don't do is hurt the testimony of the church.
Yep.
Because the church is bigger than all of us. So we need to make sure that to outsiders, we look like Christ.
Yep.
And Christ forgives. And Christ doesn't bring up old wrongs.
Yep. Well, and that's why you have pastors falling, or part of the reason, there's lots of reasons, but is that like they get found out that they're doing some sinful thing, quote unquote sinful thing, depending on what it is, and then in theory you would think that as a church body there would be like a space for healing and growth and renewal and redemption, right? Like all these things that are supposed to be part of this following Jesus thing. And it's not. They just get kicked out, sent somewhere else. Get out of here because you're dirtying the name of the church just by being here.
And
right?
then there's no acknowledgement of the harm that's been caused.
Yeah. There's right, and the harm never is repaired. It's just kind of shuffled off to the side and sent somewhere else, and you move on to whatever the next thing is.
Yeah.
There's no actual healing in any of it. Which was really shocking for me when it happened at my church. Like, just watching the whole process as a teenager, I was like, just doesn't feel right, you know? Like, it doesn't follow any of these beliefs that we're supposed to hold so dear. Right? Which, I'm not shocked by now, but...
Yeah. But it felt shocking at the time.
Yeah.
Because the entire thing was supposed to be based on redemption, and forgiveness and renewal,
right?
And
that's
instead
the whole
they
thing,
just
right?
threw your pastor out and never talked about him again.
Pretty much. Yep.
Next one, using children. So in the power and control wheel, this is exploiting parental authority or access to children. In the church, this often looks like scandals.
Yeah.
So most of us are familiar with the priest childhood sexual abuse scandals. One that's coming to light more and more these days is the boarding schools that were used as hotbeds of sexual abuse, physical abuse, of destroying entire cultures very intentionally. Missionary world. Yeah. So this was residential schools. The biggest one is the ones that were used for Native American children, where you steal the children, you cart them off, you cut their hair, you beat them if they speak English, and you make sure that you convert them to evangelicalism and or kill them, and then you wipe out that culture and replace it with something that is more subservient to your belief system. Power. When my father was growing up on the mission field, they believed that boarding schools were the best and only way, because otherwise women would be teaching children all of what they knew, so homeschooling wasn't an option for them, and they had to have an education in English. So my father and his siblings were carted off to a boarding school, which was not a good experience that they still don't like to talk about.
Right. So we don't know why it wasn't great for in a lot of ways. We just don't know. Yeah.
A lot of it they still don't remember and still won't talk about.
That's a rough one. Like, I feel like that really gets to the heart of a lot of the power issue there. Like, how much of it is just like a very strong cultural, desire to shape the culture in a specific way, to maintain a very specific type of culture in power.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the whole point of it. And it's so obvious, especially with Indian boarding schools, right? Like, man, it's just brutal, really, to even, like, what the lengths they went to just to make sure white people would be in charge is so sad.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I mean, and obviously there's numerous examples of this in history, but
Yeah, the very, very blatant racism.
Yeah.
And manifest destiny theology that was involved there is just overwhelming.
It kills me how people miss how big of a role the church had to play in all of that.
Well, it was the driving force.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. This is the church. That was doing this stuff.
And brushing past that because we don't have 5 hours to go into how fucked up that all was. The more modern iteration of this, in a lot of cases, is obviously child sexual abuse in churches, but also the youth pastor 18-year-old girl dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
Or, as they are known on TikTok, the new crop of trad wives.
Oh, jeez.
Where a youth pastor will groom girls from the time they are 13 to 15, marry them as soon as they turn 18, or in one of my youth pastor cases, when she was 16 with parental permission. Immediately impregnate them and keep them at home, isolated from the rest of the world, so they can maintain the purity of the trad wife vision.
Right. Well, and that's such a perfect picture of the whole thing. The male, the patriarchal abuse, the isolation, the emotional abuse, like that in my mind is like the perfect example of all of that in play in one scenario, right? Like that is the power and control wheel at its finest.
Yeah.
In marrying a 16-year-old girl and getting her pregnant, and she's just stuck in this world of control that she doesn't even know that there's something else out there to be in.
Yeah, she doesn't even get to finish high school, let
Yeah.
alone
Yeah.
go to college, move out of her parents'
Right.
house.
How would she know? How would
She
she
would
know
never know.
anything different?
Well, and the
Total
goal
indoctrination.
is ignorance.
Yep.
The goal is isolation.
Yeah.
The goal is making sure that this benefits the
It's
man to the greatest amount.
Innocence, not
Yes.
innocence. It's innocence.
Yes, it's innocence. Maintaining innocence.
Yeah. Oh, that was a big one when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Maintaining innocence at all costs.
Yeah.
Even if it means never talking about sex or naming a body part.
Right.
Especially if it means never talking about
Yeah.
sex or naming a body part.
Right. Yeah, then they don't know what they're missing. They don't know what their choices actually are.
Well, and they don't have any vocabulary
Right.
or knowledge of what is acceptable touch or not acceptable touch,
Yeah.
or who's allowed to touch them or not allowed to touch them, because ultimate authority is in the authority structure of the church. And since you are a child or a woman, you are the very bottom of that authority pole, and anything that anybody above you on that hierarchy does is ordained of God.
Right. They're the authority over you.
Yep.
Gosh, that's so messed up.
It is.
I guess that's just the thing that gets me over and over again. It's just how messed up it is.
Yeah.
Right. And going back to, why did we leave? Well, it's because we started to see all of these messed up things. Right? Like just thing after thing after thing. And we're like, that's just not right. We can't, in good conscience, keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so messed up.
Well, and the male privilege is the next spoke of the wheel, and one of the things that made us realize how messed up it was when we were speaking to an elder and his wife in the church office, and she screamed at me, "Why are you talking when your husband's here?"
Yeah. Just a wild sentence at this point in our lives.
Oh, it really is. Wow, okay. I don't like any of that. Oh gosh. So the male superiority in the church is based off a reading of the entire Bible, actually, written from a patriarchal worldview, but also readings of Paul and of Genesis. So God created man, and woman was just there as an accoutrement.
Accoutrement.
To make him more happy. But man was God's plan for the world, and women are just there, essentially. They weren't in part of the original. In part of the original perfect plan, women did not exist. And then in Paul's teachings, in Paul's teachings, he does not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. So obviously, they're inferior. However, we know that they were made second, and we know that they're not supposed to talk in church. So,
Yeah.
So leadership positions are mostly male in the white evangelical church. Women have very little institutional authority, and usually it's relegated to teaching children's Sunday school, taking care of the church housekeeping and kitchen, and sometimes teaching women's Bible studies.
It's very much the very specific gender roles and very and you know, and it's that back to that authority chain where like everybody is supposed to be over them authority wise.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy.
Well, and it feels odd still talking about this ridiculous authoritarian patriarchal structure in a more modern world.
It does.
But these debates are still ongoing in the church.
No, for
Are
sure.
women allowed to speak? Are women allowed to get ordained? Obviously not. The gender roles, whether women are supposed to be allowed to have jobs outside of the household, who's supposed to have authority in a marriage? Obviously, it's not the woman.
Right.
And
Well,
that breeds a lot of contempt
Yeah,
for
well,
each other.
and it's a big reason why they hate LGBTQ plus people,
Yes.
right? Is because like they're having these arguments about what women's roles are supposed to be, and the LGBTQ plus community just blows all that so far out of the water,
Yes.
right? Like it's just like you include if you include that, none of those arguments just make any sense anymore.
Yes.
Right? Like it just so they hate it
Yes.
because it ruins their whole argument just by the fact that these people exist,
Mhm.
right? And so that's I think that's really one of the primary motivating factors of their disdain for the gay community, gay queer community, is just that the existence. If they acknowledge if they do acknowledge the existence of the queer community, it blows up their authoritarian gender roles arguments. And I mean, there's other reasons too, but I think that's a big one that
Well,
isn't talked about very much.
Which is why they don't refer to it as a community. They refer
Oh,
to
sure.
it as things like
Yeah,
the gays,
Right.
or those people with pronouns,
right.
or things like that. Because if you can
They relegate
ostracize them enough,
sinners,
if you
yeah.
can relegate them to an entirely different realm of existence, then they
Yeah.
don't actually exist in your reality.
Right.
Which is
what
part
they've
of why our family and church had
Right.
to shun us.
Yes, it is.
Because while they're talking about, well, who changes diapers in your
Yeah.
house,
Right.
we're talking about things that are entirely beyond their scope of comprehension and shouldn't exist in
Yeah.
their ideal world.
Right. They can't handle it. Like genuinely, it's
Yeah.
it's not a conversation they can even begin to have. They don't know how to talk about it because what they believe doesn't allow for it
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. It's very interesting. I hadn't really thought about it in these terms and how much it blows it up just
Yeah.
so much. Just the very existence of lesbians. Or transgender people,
Yeah.
or gay people, or any of them. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It blows up their whole system.
Well, it also confuses them drastically because we had lots of classes on apologetics
Yeah.
in elementary, high school, and college. And the apologetics thing was based on Darwinism. So how can I convince you that Christianity is right using holes in Darwin's The Origin of Species?
Right. Right.
So when
a lot of
they
it was that.
try
for
to
sure.
approach us to tell us about what sinners we are and how wrong we are, they're saying, well, how does carbon dating work? And we're like, I don't care how carbon dating works. It works. I'm gonna go to the Pride Parade now. And they're like, well, but what about the dodo bird? I'm like, you have fun with the dodo bird. I'm going to Icons. That's a gay bar in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But they cannot possibly include something that blows up the entire patriarchal power structure
No.
in their frame
Right.
of reference, so it cannot exist, which
Yeah.
is why your family still can't even say your name.
Right.
Because it would be admitting that an entire part of the world exists that they're not willing to acknowledge.
Yeah. No, that's the reason. Yep. That's the main reason. And they just always go back to, well, God created male and female. He created male and female. It's like, okay, I'm female. What is your problem? No. Why do you keep saying that over and over again? It's not helping, clearly.
All they have is
They
bumper
say it to me
stickers.
like it's gonna,
Like it's
make
gonna
me go,
rewire your brain.
You're right. I never thought. So silly.
I think the ideal response to that is, no, God created only female and she is glorious.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that
I'll
would be
have to
fun.
try that next time.
But we've got to keep moving on to economic abuse. Yet another spoke. We experienced this one in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We experienced it when we had to be grateful for every single second of every single class at Moody because they had discounted it so much for us. And if we didn't show gratefulness and never question any of our teachers, then we weren't doing God's work and being grateful enough. We experienced this when people would hold things over our heads like, if you do good at this church thing, we'll give you diapers for your baby. Never mind that we couldn't afford light bulbs at the time.
Yeah.
We had one light bulb in a 2-bedroom house for the longest time.
It's amazing we made it this far.
It's amazing we made it this far. It's just crazy. And then we experienced it again when we lost our entire income and house when we left the church fully.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was weird, like, before we left, we were pastoring, and people would bring us food.
One person broke into our house to leave us a
They did.
squash casserole.
That's true. Which, for the record, don't break into people's houses. Just don't. Anyway, I don't care what you're doing. Because having the reason I did it to give them food, that's not a good reason to break into somebody's house.
No, it's not.
But beyond that, I mean, so there was that, which was bad. But then also, like, they would be like, "We'll help you with food," right? That would be what the church would say to the pastors, because you're only making so much money, right? It's not a great salary.
And they're like, you don't have to worry about it.
Right, because we're gonna give you food, and then they give you like a whole bunch of canned food.
That was there from their Y2K stores.
Yeah, a lot of it was really old.
And this was
newer, but like mishmash.
13 through 2017 through 2019.
Yeah.
2013 through 2019, we got so many cake mixes and packets of pasta that had been contaminated with weevils because they didn't store them properly in the year 2000.
Yeah, right.
We had one spice pack somebody gave us that had expired in 1976.
Yeah. That was bad. Yeah, so like, and not only that, even if it didn't have weevils in it, why are you giving us cake? We have 5 kids. What's the nutritional value of cake? Right? Like, not only that, I could go buy boxed cake. Boxed cake. It's really cheap.
And for the record, this is because they were paying us roughly $30,000 a year for a family of 7.
Yeah.
$30,000 a year, and we had a mortgage.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was.
And we're not allowed to get jobs outside the house. And had 5 toddlers.
Yeah, but no, the food thing was weird. We would occasionally get, like, I remember bacon. We got some good bacon a couple times.
There were some lovely meats that we were given by the hunters and the farmers. That was great.
Yeah.
Well, and they were all very well meaning. I will say that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it was not terribly practical.
No,
that's
a lot
my
of it
point.
was not terrible. And we weren't part of the prosperity doctrine people.
No.
So they didn't believe that if you just gave every single cent you had to God, then you would become a millionaire or anything like that.
No. But that is a messy part of the church that a lot of people do believe in.
Yeah. But a lot of it still seems like a modern age sale of indulgences.
Yeah.
So the Protestant and Catholic Church.
That's basically what tithing is.
Exactly.
It's basically indulgences.
The Protestant and Catholic Church split over 500 years ago, partially because, this was one of the excuses they used, the Catholic Church was selling indulgences, which is where if you have enough money, you can go pay the church and have certain sins forgiven. Which is how a lot of people treat the church now. It's fine if I lust after my neighbor, as long as I give money to the church, as long as I give a cake mix to the pastor, as long as I do this thing, it will weigh out that thing, like the feathers on the scale, and everything will be fine.
Right, it's not, like, no Bible student would ever call that good theology, right? Like, but it's, if you go actually meet people in church, that's how they live, right? That's their thought process. It's not necessarily the theology being taught, but that's kind of what they've gleaned from whatever exposure they've had to church and Bible and whatever, is that this is kind of how this works.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely
I was
right.
just often surprised at, like, how little Bible and theology church members actually knew. Like, it was always
because
less than I thought it was going to
magic.
be.
That's what they're paying you for.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly it. They wanted the pastor to have all of the knowledge and the magic, and they could just
give some money.
Yep, give some money, show up on Sunday, maybe Wednesday, and feel good about themselves.
Yep.
It was a very common thing, which was mind blowing to me even. That was always mind blowing.
And then the last spoke of our wheel: coercion and threats. Making threats to gain compliance. And though we've already touched on this.
Yeah.
Compliance in the church is linked with salvation. It's linked with the acceptance of your community. It's linked with familial belonging. You are not part of this family if you are not a Christian. Which is what our families say. And divine favor. God will bless you if you do these things. God will not bless you if you don't. Which is also part of why they can't come visit us at a house that has more than one light bulb, because they believe that we are supposed to be cursed by God for not being in his divine favor.
Right.
And seeing
and they're associating with sinners.
Yeah, and they're associating with sinners. You're not even supposed to eat with such an individual.
Which is confusing, given, the whole Jesus thing.
Yeah, well...
that one confuses the blazes out of me.
Yeah.
I do not get that one at all.
Well, he could do that because he's God, and as such
God.
could not be contaminated by the sinners.
Oh, yeah. That's be like Jesus only applies to a point.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Such rationalization.
Yep. So, some examples of this are, you can't leave this church because the church is God's protection. And if you leave the church, you'll lose the protection of God. Your entire family will die. Like Job, your house will burn down or get struck by lightning, and you will die of cancer.
Well, it's the story of Nineveh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's how I really thought of it most of my life. Was like the world outside of the church was Nineveh, this horrible place with mean, nasty people who are going to.
As VeggieTales would say, they slap each other with fishes.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, sure, as soon as I got out there, I'd be slapped by a fish, which, I don't know, meant something probably along the lines of get offered drugs, or I don't even know what I thought was going to happen. I just knew it was bad, and it was evil, and there was like red and black clouds, and
Yeah.
I didn't know what, but I knew it was bad.
That's what happens if you shop at the self-help section at Walmart instead of going to Martell's, by the way.
Right, the clouds.
The
Everything.
clouds, the whole thing.
The fish
Struck by lightning, immediately slapped by a halibut.
That's right, halibut.
But you don't even have to leave the church for those things to start happening to you. You could just question the authority of an elder or a deacon or the pastor or your Bible study leader. Any of that questioning of authority, any doubt, and God will immediately start punishing you. And any hardship or suffering is a punishment for that disobedience and that spirit of rebellion.
Yeah.
that you have inside you.
Yeah. And I feel like the church tries to like soften these things, but the truth is when you peel it back, that's what they're saying, right? Like they try and make it fluffier and softer, and like you'll see softer moments in this church or that church or the other church. But it's just putting a pillow on a spike, right? Like the spike is still there. Like this is just like this the foundational aspects of what the church is. Like even in, you Google this stuff and it tries to like say, well, some of these this isn't the case for all churches. Some churches are much more inclusive. aren't doing these things. It's like, okay, yeah, but like this is the foundational structure for sure of the evangelical system we grew up in.
Yeah.
And like there's no padding that. Like it's just the reality of that system.
And I agree with the fact that some churches can be supportive, some churches can be inclusive, but if those churches are doing their job right, they are also dealing with the innate problematicness and history of the structure that they are building themselves on.
Right. Yeah, well, they have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't include people,
right.
And you can't take care of people
right.
unless you acknowledge that your movement has historically and recently been very involved with a lot of problematic injustices. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's a systemic thing. It's not a these few churches have some problems thing.
Yeah.
It's the way the system, it's been this way for centuries.
Yes.
Like it's very, very hardwired into what the church is.
And they will very gladly accept everyone. All are welcome. It's great for you to come in because you're a sinner and we're going to save you.
Right.
So often you'll be welcomed. They'll give you a welcome packet. They'll make sure somebody invites you out to lunch. They'll make sure this, that, and the other thing, and you feel like you're seen just as you are. But then when it comes right down to it, if you are a member of the LGBTQ community, are you allowed to actually be that in the church? Because a lot of them will let you join, but then if you try to do a leadership position, they will say, well, you can't be practicing.
Right.
Or if you start asking questions, what's the answer? Is the answer, let's talk to the pastor about that and he can tell you why you're wrong?
Right.
Do they welcome discussion? Do they welcome disagreement? Are you actually welcome with questions?
Yeah. Or doubts.
Or doubts. Or are you welcome as you?
Yeah.
And are they taking advantage of your finances?
Right, that's a big one.
That is a big one.
Transparency. That was a word. I was trying to think of that word earlier.
Yeah.
The financial transparency is significant. Because it was top secret. Like
that
even when I was
reminds me
pastor,
of that, yeah.
It was supposed to be top secret who was giving money, and it was this tiny church, and like at the time there were probably 5 people giving consistently.
Yeah.
And so like if you had any kind of brain at all, you could figure out who was giving which amounts, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to look at the finances to figure out how much money you got, right? And I remember we're in a meeting and I was explaining how this person is leaving and so this money is going to be gone, and somebody goes, how do you know they're giving that money? And I'm like, I thought about it for more than 10 seconds. It wasn't hard.
Well, and there was one missions agency that we were in, and the leader and his wife were telling us all about how they were getting audited, and it was the work of the devil. And he was trying to tempt them and make them question God's authority because they had to account for the millions of dollars that were coming into their agency.
Yeah.
And the government was like, hey, are you a money laundering operation? And they thought that was the devil.
Right.
Trying to take them down.
Right. Yep. I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Yeah.
You're right. That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't even, God, that'd be interesting to know more about.
It would. Fortunately, we don't have to.
Yeah. Man, such a mess.
Yeah. So that's why we shunned the church,
That's right.
and that's why we decided that
Once again, we thought about it for more than 10 seconds.
that's why we decided we could no longer ethically be involved in the evangelical movement.
Yeah. We tried.
We tried real hard.
It was just too messed up. Too power hungry. Too mean. Bad system. It's ultimately what we realized.
Well, it's a system of abuse.
Right.
Like a very well-defined system of abuse that you can point to specific things from each of the national domestic abuse hotlines power and control wheel and say, hey,
Yeah.
this is problematic. And we didn't even touch on the physical violence
Right.
portion that is a part of national domestic violence's power and control wheel and part of the evangelical
Oh, for
system.
sure. Yeah.
The beating of children and the
Yep.
raping of women are inherent to the power and control structure.
Yeah.
And we didn't even touch on that one.
Right. And it's just like, again, I want to say, like, so many people try and put little pillows on it and give it a facelift and say the church is good for you. And, like, I just cannot justify any of those statements that people are making based on my experience with the church. And again, I will say there, I have to say, might be some inclusive, transparent, non-power and control churches out there. Because of my experience, I probably won't ever find out for sure.
Yeah.
But
Well, because you have been burnt enough by an abusive system.
Yeah.
There is no healthy way for you to go back
yeah,
to a system that is an abusive system.
right, or might
That
even
has
might be.
abused.
Yeah.
Just like you don't go back to a narcissistic man
Right.
who beat you
Right.
just because he started going to AA.
For sure. Still not a good idea. Yep. Yeah, and I just have, I mean, it sometimes feels like beating a dead horse, but it really is just genuinely a bad system. It's bad theology. It's, I mean, if you want to get in the weeds, it's bad biblical interpretation. It's just bad. And bad for people, and bad for marriages, bad for children. You know, like, I can think of very few, if any, positive outcomes from the system, right? Like, it's
Yep.
it's not good. Watch out. Don't do it. Get out. Run.
Yeah. When you see abuse, look at it.
Right.
Watch it.
Yeah.
Observe it. Is it abuse?
Yeah.
If it is, you can't stay there.
Yeah, don't justify it.
Don't justify it.
Yeah.
Don't apologize for it. Just like you shouldn't with a partner who is abusive. Don't do it with a system that is actively abusing you.
Yeah. If they're controlling you, if they're keeping you out, if they're not being transparent, any of those things.
If you're not allowed to ask questions.
If you're not allowed to ask questions, those
If
are
you're
all
not
big
allowed to
red
have
flags.
Outside friends. If
Yeah.
you're only allowed to read the books that they tell you should read.
Yep.
If you're only allowed to think the things that they tell you should think. You are in a cult.
Right. Which, again, that's another thing where I listen to podcasts and stuff, and people are so like, cult is this very specific, like, intense compound thing, right? Like,
Well,
everybody's
because
put
they're-
cult in this
Yeah.
Jimmy Jones, whatever that guy's name was, Jonestown world,
Yes.
right? And
They're thinking of Jonestown and they're thinking of Heaven's Gate.
Yeah,
And
Heaven's Gate, yeah. some very specific,
highly publicized.
cult
shootouts.
cases. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they really and it's really stuff that focuses on that outer part of the will we barely talked about.
Yeah.
Right? The physical abuse and the sexual abuse.
But you don't just get to the physical and sexual abuse.
Right.
You start with a locus of power and control,
Exactly.
and you use a very well-defined set of circumstances to make sure that people do not feel that they can leave. And that's how you get physical and sexual abuse.
Yeah. And I feel like that's such a hugely misunderstood thing in our culture at large. Is people just really, they're like, oh yeah, sexual and physical abuse is bad, for sure.
Yeah.
But they're missing
They're missing everything that
inner circle of violence that happens to people in cults that they write off to, you know, they're just going to church.
Like,
well, no.
Like an abusive relationship that doesn't start off, like somebody doesn't rape you and then you're in a relationship with them.
Right.
Somebody love bombs you.
Right.
And coerces you and manipulates you and then abuses you.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yep.
Which is why when people are asking me, what is a cult?
Right.
I say it's something that takes control of your time,
right,
your thoughts, your finances, and your sexuality.
Right. Yep.
If they have those 4 things, you are in a cult.
Yep. Which is a lot broader of a swath than people like to think. It freaks people out. But it's just true. And scary.
Yeah.
But very true.
Well, yeah. It's because they look just like us. They don't have to have head coverings and long skirts and be keeping children in cattle trailers to be a cult.
That's right. And that really freaks people out. And they don't like to acknowledge it. They don't like to deal with it. Like, it's fascinating to me, like how, like, you know, 40-foot pole people are about, like, expanding the definition of the cult to what you said, right? Like, it freaks people out because it's so pervasive, I think, in our culture. And so, like, they won't ask questions. They'll really sidestep it. They'll not acknowledge how huge the cult is in our society, because it's a scary thing to think about. And I get it, you know, like, it is a scary thing to think about, but ignoring it is not helping anybody.
Well, because
right?
it doesn't make for good news. It doesn't make for a good true crime podcast. If instead of talking about how 36 people were sexually assaulted and murdered, we talk about your next door teenage neighbor is being taken financial advantage of.
Right.
And their thoughts are controlled by someone outside of them, and they are not allowed to disagree.
Yeah. Right.
That's a lot scarier.
So much scarier.
But it makes for a lot less interesting of a podcast.
It's happening every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you just kind of want to shake people sometimes.
Yeah.
Wake up! Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just saying this morning, because, like, why did that come up? Oh, I think it was, like, I get evangelical memes on Instagram and whatever, and something mentioned Rebecca St. James, who was a very popular Christian singer-songwriter when we were kids. I can't even remember what songs she did. I know I recognized it as soon as I heard it, but yeah. Anyway. And so I do this anytime, like, an old artist's name comes up. I'm like, I wonder where they are now.
I wonder if they came out yet.
Yeah. Sadly, no. Rebecca St. James is not one of the people who has figured out that she's still in a cult. So,
Rats.
I know. Also, not her real name.
That's not shocking.
Rebecca Jean or something like that. I might have got that wrong.
Rebecca Jean. We gotta wrap this up, Tess.
Yeah.
I have a fun fact for you.
Oh boy.
M&M stands for Mars and Murray.
I knew this one.
You did? I did not. Forrest Mars, the son of the Mars Company founder, first spotted the British confection Smarties, which is still what we have in Canada, by the way. Smarties are chocolate with a candy covering on them. They are not... we called them kangaroos when I was small, which is what Americans call Smarties, those little chalky ones. Yeah. Anyways, he spotted the British confection Smarties during the Spanish Civil War and noticed the candy shell prevented the chocolate from melting. He teamed up with Bruce Murray, the son of Hershey's Chocolate's president, and the company later trademarked the "Melts in your mouth, not in your hand" slogan.
M&M's. Mars and Murray.
Mars and Murray.
Yep.
Mars Company and Hershey Chocolate.
Right.
That's pretty exciting.
It's
It's a very
a power couple. if you ever heard
incestuous
one.
little world of chocolate.
Yeah. Oh dear. It's probably a cult.
We should look into that.